When it comes to debt, it can be stressful. It can be overwhelming. It can absolutely consume you. It can destroy relationships. But with the right strategies, the right mindset, you can achieve financial freedom. Now, being a financial counselor and a financial kind of literacy educator, I've done this for a multitude of years. I have eliminated hundreds of thousands of dollars of not only personal debt, but also getting rid of a lot of debt for the people that I do the financial counseling for. Now, of course, it's a little bit more difficult for some people than it is for others. And really knowing and understanding what we're going to go over in today's live stream is the way to get and really start your journey to make that debt-free steps. Starting with number one, understanding your debt. This is very important. You really can't get a hold of and really break down the debt that you have if you do not understand the debt, if you do not understand where it is coming from. And of course, this breaks down into a couple different buckets that we can look at. We have credit card debt, we have student loan debt, we have mortgage debt, we have car loan debt, we have personal debt. There can be a multitude of debt that people can accumulate. Starting with credit card debt, this is balances that you carry on your cards that you're not paying off in full, and you are carrying credit card debt. Now, this, of course, is one of the absolute most detrimental forms of debt that we do see. When I look at some of the cards, even some of the cards that people are doing consolidation loans on, that people are looking to do balance transfers, I have seen them running from 20, 25, 30, even 35, 36% when it comes to credit card debt. So it is crazy how much money when you start getting into higher balances at a 36% interest rate that people are paying on cards. When you look at student loan debt, this is one that kind of edges the line of good debt and bad debt. Because when it comes to student loan debt, particularly, it could be debt that is accumulated when you're borrowing money for education, which means, though, in turn, you could have a much better job, depending what you're going for, depending on the student loan debt that you're carrying. And of course, trying to minimize the student loan debt does make a big difference. Now, mortgage debt is always one that majority of people, if you own a home, it is not going to be paid free and clear unless you're inheriting it, win the lotto, anything like that. But when it comes to mortgage debt, you do need a place to live, and mortgage debt, unfortunately, for a majority of us, is really it's really hard to get rid of. It is the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your life, and really getting down and paying down that home loan can make a big difference, but it's usually at a much lower rate because it is tied to the home itself. And big shout out to Jordan. Thank you for joining us, Jordan, for the live stream. Car loan debt. This is another one. If you finance a vehicle, you have car loan debt. Now, this is where, again, it kind of gets personal, because if you're taking a loan out for 36 months, if you're taking it out for 60 months, now we're seeing them for 72, 84. We're seeing them for 96. We're seeing auto loans for 120 months where people are buying and financing these vehicles for a 10-year period. It is crazy when you think about even living here in Michigan. A car loan in a car itself, unless it's well maintained, usually doesn't last 10 years. That is a lot of time, and that is a lot of interest if you're dragging out these loans for 10 years. Now, of course, the last one we look at is personal loan debt. This is one where loans have been taken out for personal reasons, home repairs, medical bills. Of course, things in life do happen. If you don't have that emergency fund, loans and personal loans do get taken out. Now, in addition to that, though, I see a lot of people that take out personal loans and they take them out for weddings. I see quite a few for weddings. I see people that are taking out personal loans when it comes to vacations. There are reasons, and really fundamentally reasons, to take out personal loans when there is a need, that is more of a need than something that you want. Again, I've seen people take out $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 for a wedding. You're talking about one single day when you're going to drop 25 grand on a personal loan, starting your life together with your significant other. And then, of course, you're spending the next 5 to 7 years paying for that wedding, which again is kind of crazy. But let's get into how we can take care of this, guys. So once we know exactly what kind of debt that we have, calculating your debt, this is the clear picture. This is the accountability. When it comes to, and what I was saying about people sometimes have an easy way and really an easier time when it comes to consolidating and eliminating debt. Some people really struggle it because they don't want to face exactly what it is to be in debt and what it means to try to get out of debt. But when you start calculating your debt, make a list of your debt, look at everything. You're adding your debt, you're looking at your lender, you're looking at your outstanding balances in there, and also see what type of debt it is. Like we said, There is good debt, there is bad debt. The bad debt is what we want to focus on and what we want to eliminate first, because of course, it is not only going to be the most beneficial, you'll get the most kind of bang for your buck. You'll see the most return because you're paying off the highest interest rate first. And this is where it comes. With the different types of debt, you have to prioritize what you're going to really systematically and what you're going to pay off first. So when you think of the debt that we just covered, number one, credit card debt, that always is going to be the highest and the most expensive. If you have any credit card debt in its entirety, getting rid of that credit card debt is priority number one. Followed by that is the personal student loan, the personal loan debt. That is where you are taking money out for personal reasons. That usually comes with the second highest rate behind credit cards. I've seen personal loan debt that is 10, 15, even 18%. So slightly lower than most of the credit card debt, but personal loan comes in a very, very, really and on a second when it comes to not only cost of doing and really taking out these personal loans. Then we start looking at car loan debt. That is what I would put in number 3 within this list, eliminating your vehicle and getting rid of the vehicle. Now, a lot of people say student loan debt is very important. Now, that would be my 4th on this list, eliminating and getting rid of that student loan debt. Now, the reason being, when it comes to student loan debt, you have a lot of options. And if you get rid of student loan debt, if you pay it off early, if you refinance these loans, you lose a lot of the flexibility, but you also lose a lot of the options that do come specifically tied to student loan debt. So if you're taking out student loans, they can do, forbearance, you can do deferment, you can do income-based repayments. There's a lot of different caveats that come with student loans. And a lot of times the student loans also do have a longer time frame, making it a cheaper payment, but also a lower interest rate. And then the final one we look at is the mortgage debt. If you've ever followed Dave Ramsey's baby steps, the mortgage is the very, very last thing that you're going to really pay off and eliminate. Now, when we start looking at all of these, you want to list the interest. And of course, when we listed out all of our debts, the highest interest to the lowest interest, this is really mathematically the way to do it. And again, a couple ways that we'll look at through this live stream, that'll kind of show you. But knowing the interest rates lets you know exactly what to prioritize first, what is going to save you the most money in the long run. If you're doing it this way, really prioritizing, again, that credit card debt, you can pay it down, and dollar for dollar, you're going to get a lot more leverage and a lot more available funds when you're paying those down, because you're eliminating the balances that are on there on a very high interest. Now, of course, I can't do a video and I can't do a stream without talking about a budget. This, of course, when it comes to financial counseling, when it comes to education, this is the beginning. This is the basics, regardless of what you want to call it. You can call it a budget. You can call it a spending plan. You can call it a money guide, whatever you want to call it. There is going to be a very crucial step when it comes to managing your finances, getting out of debt. It is going to involve some sort of tracker. You could do pen and paper. You could do different forms. You can do applications. You can do a ton of different things, listing out your expenses, your fixed cost, your variable cost, really going through and getting an accurate picture of your spending habits is going to make a big difference. And of course, start tracking your spending. You have to see where you can at least temporarily kind of be a little bit more strict with the budget, a little bit more strict with the spending plan, and where can you cut? There's a lot of places where when you start digging into really deep in the budget, it really does make a difference. It does make an honest difference when you start seeing, a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. Most people are spending about $200 when it comes to really not things that are not necessities. When you start looking at subscriptions, when you start looking at impulse purchases, when you start adding up what you're spending on a monthly basis, you can eliminate and really see and really move levers to what you can spend less on, giving you the ability and giving you that money to eliminate debt. Guys, once the debt is gone and you become debt-free, it is a game changer for the rest of your life. Is Rocket Money still worth using? Yes. Rocket Money is one of those apps that do track, and they track spending in a multitude of accounts. So that is something that I've actually personally used. There's a couple. I know Dave Ramsey has one out there as well that kind of does, and a lot of them do similar things, but you have to make sure there's a lot of security behind it, Jordan. Now, the reason for that is when it comes to the security features, for instance, Rocket Money, that is, again, something that I have used. it incorporates a lot of different bank accounts. So let's say you have 4 different financial institutions. You can keep and really have everything in one place that you can create, and you can kind of build it out to budget the way that you want to, the way that you need to. And it takes input from multiple sources to build all that out. It does make it a lot easier. You can go through a bunch of budgeting apps. And again, you can find the one that works for you. And some of them are a lot more basic. Some of those, like Rocket Money, do have some complexity to them. But if you're using the tool, it is definitely worth it. If you don't want to do it yourself, you can have it all in one place. You can download it. You can do a lot of different things with it. As we get into the next part of this, setting realistic financial goals. Now, this is something, again, that I do the first time that I meet with an individual when we start talking about, the financial plan, really sitting and what are the goals? You have to be not only realistic when it comes to the money, your income, your expenses, what you want to pay off, but what do you want to do and why do you want to do it? This gets into the psychological factor of having more money. A lot of people say, I want more money because of I want to be able to buy this. Okay, well, what happens the moment that you obtain that? You don't have a purpose and you lost the goal or you lost the reason why you're doing what you're doing. And then, of course, when we start looking big picture, where some people will say, I want to buy a house in 7 years. Okay, perfect. We want to buy a house in 7 years. We can break that into much smaller, much more actionable steps, saying, okay, within that 7 years, how much money do we need to save? What is the credit score going to look like? If we're putting away, let's say, $2,000 a year for 7 years, we got $14,000 in the pot at the end of that time. Is that going to be enough? Do we have to adjust it? We can really break it down mathematically where, hey, maybe upfront we put a lot more towards debt. We eliminate a lot of the debt that you do have at this point, not only getting your debt to income ratios in line, but also freeing up some of the cash flow when a house comes and realistically thinking what it's going to look like. When you look at the mortgage payment, you have taxes, you have insurance, you have your mortgage payment, but you also have all the utilities. You have the maintenance costs, you have the repair costs. If you need a furnace, if you need a roof, there's a lot of things that people don't think about when it comes to big picture. And honestly, the time that they think about it is when it's broke. If an HVAC system goes out, they come in, they need to borrow $15,000 to get a new one. They haven't budgeted so much money a month to have that $15,000 available, which of course, when it comes to a budget and when it comes to, and I really get kind of worried about this, when you think of a budget, it doesn't have to be super restrictive. It doesn't have to be something that you can't go and get a coffee when you want. You can't go shopping and, spend $50 or $100 on something you need. Now, of course, I said something you need, not just something you want where you're going out and you're splurging. You can still do it, but guess what? That $100 you're spending on something you really don't need is $100 you're not allocating to something else. So when you think of the opportunity cost, if I go out and I have a really fancy dinner, I spend $200. That $200 I can't put towards my debt allocation. I can't put towards my investment accounts. You really have to pick and choose exactly what you want to do. Now, of course, when it comes to budgeting, there's a lot of different ways. The 50-30-20 rule, where 50% is those fixed expenses, 30% is the variable, 20% is the one that is the investment debt repayment. And of course, you can break it out. Me personally, budgeting method, I use zero-based budgeting. What that means is I take all the money that I earn in the month, I minus out my expenses, anything that is left over in that allocated last bucket goes straight into my investment account with M1 Finance. And with that investment account that I do have there, it is set up with smart transfers, meaning I keep X amount of money in my high yield savings account, which is my emergency fund. So I have it built up that I am literally just funneling money right into M1, into my high yield savings. Once my high yield savings account hits a certain amount, every single penny above that amount is transferred right into an investment account. And that's it. I have been keeping up, and we have been doing this cycle for probably about 2.5 years now, that I transfer everything I have left over after all the expenses are paid right into the account. It is funneled into an investment account. In the course of 2.5 years, it's grown to about $120,000, which is kind of crazy to think, but yes, and even dollar cost averaging, meaning every 2 weeks we're investing in the market. Dollar cost averaging, I've returned about a 75% return for the investment account that I have in my 3 ETF portfolio. And it's super simplified, guys. When you look at having, the breakup of an investment account, it does work very well. What financial books? I'm going to have to get back to that, Jordan. I have a couple of them that I really do like, including some of the ones that Dave Ramsey has. George Kamal, there's a few out there that I really do enjoy that I've read some of the financial books. Definitely, I'll send you over some titles. I have some pretty good titles for you. But let's get into the debt payoff strategy. This, again, is going to be systematic. And we'll start with the first one, which, of course, big fan of Dave Ramsey here, the snowball method. So the debt snowball lists them from the smallest to the largest balance. That is right. When you made a list of all of your debts, we are going through from the smallest balance all the way to the highest balance. And this is the way. So what we're going to do is we are going to put every single dollar that you have extra right into that smallest balance. Every single other debt is going to get a minimum payment and only the minimum payment. This is another thing that I see a lot of times where if an individual has, let's say, 5 credit cards, they'll put, an extra 20 bucks here, 30 bucks there, 50 bucks there. And then they'll look and they'll turn around and they'll say, the balances on these cards never move. And it's because you're not systematically following away, just like the debt snowball method, where if you made the minimum payments on 4 of the cards, put every single dollar you had, so the 20 bucks, the 50 bucks, the 100 extra bucks here, but put it onto one card which has that lowest balance. The point of this is to eliminate, to pay down and eliminate that balance, and then moving on to the next one, so on and so forth until all of your debt is gone. Now, this is a part that's really psychologically, this is the way that I see it. This is the way that you are going to see your debt eliminated on paper as fast as possible. You're going to see that small balance. So let's say your small card has a $300 balance. You might spend, a paycheck or two, maybe even a month or two, and that balance will be completely gone. Then you're moving on to some of the other ones. Now, of course, again, psychologically, when you eliminate that debt, it does make a really big difference because you can see that it's gone, whether it's closing out the line, whether it's cutting up that card, but you can see that it is completely gone at that point, and you no longer have that bill, rolling it into the next one, so on and so forth. My personal method that I use is the debt avalanche method. Now, this does take a little bit more discipline, which we've talked about before, but this is listing your debts from the highest to the lowest interest rate. So instead of doing it on the balances, we are doing it on the interest rates itself, and you're going to do the exact same thing. Minimum payments are going to go to the lowest interest rates. You are going to put every single dollar on that very, very high, the highest interest rate that you do have. Same thing systematically. When that highest interest rate is gone, you're going to move down the line to the rest of those until all of them are gone in their entirety. Mathematically, the debt avalanche method is a lot more effective when you think of the dollars that are going in there, because in the first method, in the snowball method, you could be paying off a card that has a, let's say, 9.75 interest rate, where in the debt avalanche method, that card could be your 36% card that you're dumping all of your extra money on. So two really fundamentally similar debt elimination methods, but the debt avalanche method is going to knock it out a lot faster because you are tackling that high interest rate first and getting more bang for your buck versus paying off some of the ones that could have a lower rate. Then, of course, the big part of this and the number one thing you could do if you're really serious about this, and I know some people do not like this method, is the debt consolidation. So when you think of debt consolidation, there are a couple really tips and tricks that I want to share with you, because again, it's been a decade that I've been doing this, even 17 years that I've been in the financial industry, but looking at debt consolidation. So you could take those same 5 credit cards, consolidate them all into one single lower interest rate, and also make it for the payment. Now, the catch with this and the trick with this is you're taking 5 cards, you're simplifying it into one single payment. That one single payment needs to be short term. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have $15,000 in credit card debt, you're systematically going through and paying them off. You can consolidate that to a $15,000 personal loan. Let's say the rate on this one goes to 9.5%, which is the current rate if you're running with A+ credit, but 9.5%, you consolidate it. And some people say, okay, well, I want to do it for 72 months. Guys, you don't want to drag your debt out for the next 7 years. Trust me, you don't want to. If you can squeeze a little bit of a higher payment, if you can make it a little bit more affordable, do it for 36 months. And the big thing is 3 years, it is gone. Your debt is eliminated. It is gone in its entirety. Not only did you pay a lot less interest because you consolidated everything, but you got it gone and it is completely eliminated in a certain amount of time. Now, of course, with this, here is the caveat and here is the issue that I see is that I will do a consolidation loan again using our $15,000 example. We sweep all the money into a low rate unsecured loan. Perfect. 36 months. Great. We got the payments. Debt to income is in line. Boom. Everything is set. Then the individual that wants to eliminate debt, that has the strategy, that wants to be debt free, starts using credit cards again. And that is the snowball that I actually see. And I see it where we do a consolidation, we get everything together, everything's all set, it's all nice and good. 36 months, it's going to be gone. Then we get, 2 years into that unsecured loan. They're looking to do a new loan. They racked up another $7,000 in credit card debt because they're not budgeting properly, because that spending plan is not solidified and it's not in place. They are back doing the exact same thing. They are back and they are borrowing again and again and again. And every 3 to 5 years, we see the cycle kind of repeat because they're not living with inside of their means, because they do not budget and they do not build that spending plan out correctly. Don't want to be it, don't want to recycle it, and do not want to see the people back with the debt again and again and again. So how can we keep this from happening? Big picture, reducing your expenses is the critical step that they're missing. When you look at doing the consolidations, when you look at some of the elimination of debt, really cutting unnecessary costs, cutting and negotiating your bills, looking at your interest rates, looking at different options for anything in your life. When you look at a mortgage, when you look at an auto loan, when you look at anything that you're spending money on, period, you have to go through and you have to take a hard look at what you can cut. And again, for a lot of us, this could be just temporarily till you get everything under control, till you eliminate all of that credit card debt and you say never again. You're not going to accumulate that debt. Because when you start adding up numbers, when you list out all of your debts, when you look at your payments, how much is going to interest? When you start mathematically thinking how much is going to interest, and this was my eye-opening experience. This was my life-changing experience. The first one was actually seeing on paper how much I was paying on a monthly basis in interest. That was it. So if you're making $20 an hour, if you're paying, let's say $500 a month in interest, how many hours are you working every single month just to cover your interest payment? Not the principal, not paying down the balances, just for the things you already have in your life, just for the things that you bought in the past if you're sitting on a bunch of credit card debt. Super, super eye-opening. And of course, the second one, when I took my master's program, we went through a kind of a financial course similar to what we teach and kind of what I educate. But we went in and we looked at 3 months of statements. We brought in everything we had and broke it systematically into kind of a spending plan, seeing exactly where we could cut. We started our class off starting with 3 goals. So when you think of 3 goals, what are 3 things financially that you want to do? That is where we started. And through the class, through the financial education piece, we went through and said, okay, cutting out all of our budgeting, looking at all of our expenses, going through the accountability piece, getting to the end of the class, it was very easy to see how you could achieve those 3 goals in an 11-week period, which was how long the class was. But at the end of that time, it was incredible to see, people that wanted to put more money towards a 401k, but never had the ability to. Just taking accountability over a couple weeks, they were able to start contributing to the 401k. They were eliminating debt. They were seeing unnecessary costs where they could really cut them down. And there's a lot of things. When you think of everything in your life, it's very, very competitive. Again, when you think of mortgages, when you think of cars, when you think of cell phone providers, when you think of internet providers, everything can be negotiated and it's so competitive where if I take my plan and I go over to T-Mobile or I go to AT&T and I leave Verizon, chances are I can get a similar plan or a cheaper plan or the same plan at a much cheaper cost, depending on what you're looking for. This can also be true with insurance. Insurance is probably one of the biggest variables that I see where I've had individuals that have literally went through and got different quotes for insurance, cut their insurance bill by $1,600 a year. I don't know about you, but there's a lot that I could do with $1,600. So taking a very big chunk out of your monthly budget just because you have identical insurance with a different provider. Now, tracking your spending, like we said earlier, tracking the spending, very, very important. Looking at places where you can cut down and really cut down some of the unnecessary expenses, but also even limit some of those subscription services, memberships, reoccurring payments. There's a lot of things you can cancel, a lot of things that people don't use that they still pay for. Then where can you trim the budget? So this, of course, trimming the budget is another part, looking at where you can cut back. Consider the entertainment, dining out less frequently, cost-efficient solutions, looking at leadership activities. Also, when you think about this, not only the side of cutting expenses, where can you have a little bit more income? When you think about, the debt repayment and how fast do you really want to pay off and become debt-free, this could be working, a second job. It could be a side hustle like what we're doing right here on YouTube. Produces a little bit of income. From the income generated through AdSense, I actually invest 100% of everything that we get in here right back into that M1 account. And I actually have a YouTube AdSense account with M1 Finance. That is my investment account. And of course, with your recommendations through the YouTube channel, we actually went through and we put it all into the SCHD. So the Charles Schwab, the high yield dividend in there, and that is where it is investing. But again, with a side hustle, with a second job, with extra hours, anything that you can make this go faster, that you can earn, an extra $20, $50, $100, whatever it may be, but being able to put that money towards the debt and eliminate the debt faster is going to make a big game-changing difference for the rest of your life. Also looking, and I talked about this in another video that I did a couple days ago, saving on groceries and planning your meals, really meal prep. This is something my wife and I actually started a couple years ago now, but looking for sales, looking for coupons. When I go to a store, and this is something that I have always done, when I go to a store, I take a list. If it is not on my list, I do not buy it. My wife knows, I know, I do not buy it. My kids even know. If there are 10 items on my list, I will buy 10 items on my list. That is it. There is no impulse purchases. There is nothing else. I am getting those 10 items. If they don't have one of those 10 items, I do not substitute. I will come home with 9 items instead of the 10 that are on the list. This really keeps me from deviating. And of course, when they talk about groceries, 30 to 40% of all groceries are thrown in the garbage. It's crazy. It's absolute insane that 30 to 40%. So if you think of your total bill for groceries for the month, if you're running, $800 for a family of 4, $1,000 for a family of 4, you're spending hundreds of dollars that guaranteed, just statistically speaking, is going to be thrown in the garbage. And that, again, is the average for the nation. My meal prep, meal prep. And there you go. So some ramen noodles. Yes, we have ramen noodles here too. Even though, my wife and I work a total of 4 jobs between both of us. Yes, ramen noodles. My kids love ramen noodles as well. Yes, Jordan, that is the facts. And there's a point in life where that's exactly what it is. Guys, Dave Ramsey, again, uses the beans and rice. Doesn't mean literal beans and rice. Doesn't mean, ramen noodles are going to be 4 meals every single day because they're only 50 cents. But it means that you're paying attention to where you're spending your money and what you're getting your value on. Now, next section we look at is, of course, negotiating the bills, negotiating the interest rates, contacting service providers, internet, cable, phone, super competitive industry. You can get things a lot cheaper. Refinancing loans. When you look at personal loans, when you look at debt consolidation, mortgage loans, everything can be, and a lot of places will refinance even at a lower rate that you're currently at. So you're guaranteed to save money. And even with credit card interest rates, again, if you're not looking to do the debt consolidation, if you're not looking to do the balance transfers, good payment history, they will negotiate not only the amount that you have if you're going to pay it off in bulk, which this is something that I didn't know about, but they'll also work with you on the interest rates. If you call a credit card company you've had for a while, you have a 25.99%, you know what? It's super competitive. Go ahead, pay that off, get rid of it, balance transfer, close out that card, and that's it. You save the money. You don't have to pay such a high interest rate for what you do have. And of course, looking at alternatives, there's a lot of additional things in there. Fun fact, pizza started as a poor folk food. There we go. Pizza right now, Jordan, we actually had pizza at a meeting that I had today. Pizza is super expensive, guys. We have a Jets pizza. I don't know if Jets is nationwide or anything of that nature, but we have a Jets pizza. And for like a large square pizza, it's like 28 bucks. I thought it was insane for a large square pizza to be $30 with almost no toppings, not even a specialty pizza. But it was crazy how expensive pizza has gotten. Me personally and my family, that's right. We like Little Caesars, $5. I'm not spending a $28 pizza. And Jordan out of in Virginia has never heard of it. Yeah, it's a local pizza place, but they have pretty good pizza. But I mean, Little Caesars is $5. They're running $28 a pizza. It's incredible how expensive it is. But like we were talking about, increasing on the income, negotiating your salary, looking at your benefits, anywhere that you can pull a little bit of extra money, investing for passive income, which is something that I love to personally do. I have crypto investments. I have investments again with M1 Finance that are generating income. I have stocks that are paying me dividends. I don't have any bonds, don't have mutual funds, and I don't agree with the bonds. I know Warren Buffett put a lot of money into bonds recently. Real estate is another part. I refuse to touch real estate, especially I could invest like a Fundrise or into a REIT, something of that nature, but owning and managing real estate myself, I have personally opted out, and I do not like mutual funds at all. Mutual funds are very, very expensive, guys. If you're looking at mutual funds usually charge about a 1% rate, where you could go into an ETF, which I invest everything in an ETF. But looking at ETFs, it can be a 0.03%, 0.02%, depending on what you're looking at. Even with the S&P index funds, put the money in there. It's very, very well known. Even when you look at some of the largest, wealthiest people, Warren Buffett says put it in the S&P 500. When you look at Ken Griffin, which of course is the founder of Citadel, he says put it in the S&P 500. Even looking at hedge fund managers, S&P 500 has been yielding about 14%, which is kind of crazy to think of the growth that we're seeing in there. It's $7 here that's still a pretty good price. $7 for a Little Caesars. Here we have the $5 hot and readies. If you want a topping on there, other than pepperoni, they charge you an extra buck, but you can get away for $6 for a pizza. And you know what? With the family of four, we can finish one pizza for $6, get some crazy bread, which I believe is $4. That's it. So, I mean, you're feeding a family of four for dinner for about 12 bucks. And be honest, yeah, probably about 12 bucks, but you have everything you have. And there you go. You don't have to drop 50 bucks, 75 bucks, 100 bucks per meal. You can make it cheaper if you really want to. Now, getting into credit cards, since we really focus on credit cards, and credit cards are the most expensive, we're almost at $1.2 trillion in credit card debt. When you think of that, guys, as a nation, it is almost $1.2 trillion in credit card debt in a very, very high interest rate environment. When you start thinking of the money generated really when it comes to financial institutions, when you think of your Capital Ones, American Express, when you think of your Chase card, they're giving you rewards, but you are paying for those rewards. And if you're not personally paying for those rewards because you pay it off in full every single month, someone is still paying for those rewards. The rewards are not coming out of thin air. Companies are not putting out their money themselves to fund these rewards program. It is coming from the interest that is earned on the backs of Americans. And I mean, let's be honest. So thinking of managing the credit cards and getting rid of these, and these again are some very, very common things that I see. Paying on time. You have to pay your credit cards on time, guys. The minimum payment, and I have seen people that have missed $25 minimum payment credit cards when they're sitting on thousands of dollars in the financial institution, in the credit union, in the bank. I don't understand it. With the missed payment, of course, you can incur late fees. You can have a higher interest rate, which sometimes that interest rate, they will not move, but it is also going to affect your credit if you're late on credit card payments. This is the reason why I say to set reminders, but also set up automation. For any of my bills, for anything that I have, I automate everything. I am an individual. I'm not writing checks. I'm not sending anything out. I check my account on a daily basis. I know what things are coming out on what days. I even get, emails through the water department, through DTE that say, hey, your bill's due. It's going to be debited at this point. Automating the process ensures I do not miss anything. They have to be paid on time. Not only that, like I said, a lot of companies where if you have let's say a 25% rate, if you're late on one single payment, that rate goes to 36%, and that rate stays at 36% for the remainder of the time that you have in there. And of course, looking at the debt snowball and the debt avalanche, you always want to pay more systematically and mathematically to get those balances down. I think if I asked you before, but velocity banking. So Jordan, velocity banking, we'll touch on that so velocity banking, can it work? Yes, velocity banking can work, but there is a very, very large margin of error that can come with velocity banking. Can it work? Yes, it can. You have to be very, very, and honestly, I really caution myself from saying it. It can work, and I have seen it work, and I have seen people do it, but it can be very detrimental if anything happens. If there is a wrench that is thrown into the velocity banking equation, a lot of times it will derail everything. And I have seen individuals that, have used it. It works well. Is it saving them as much money as they think? Not really. You do save money if you're doing it right, if you have everything aligned, if you have, the home equity line of credit. Right now with the higher interest rate environment, your margins are very, very small depending on what you have. Because if you're borrowing from one place where, again, home equity line right now might be 9.5%, you can get an auto loan at 5.5%. You're borrowing from one line to pay off something else. Again, systematically, there are different ways to do it, Jordan. Then velocity banking, can it work? Yes. If there's anything that is thrown in there as a wrench, you put your house up as collateral. That's the part that I don't like. Not only do you have a mortgage, but now you have a second mortgage through the HELOC. Financial institutions also have the ability to close that HELOC, to cancel that HELOC, to call that HELOC. And we've seen this happen in 2007, 2008, which again, I was in the banking industry. But looking that far back, we've seen them expire home equity line of credits, period. They lowered and removed the ability for people to continue borrowing. In the case of that, and I know it's kind of an extreme case, but in that case where they literally cancel your line, you might be out just from the velocity banking. Again, it can work. It's a very, very detailed, systematic, mathematic approach. And you have to have an ultra high level of, even like hardcore military discipline to get it done and to get it done properly. But you don't save that much money. Velocity banking, when they're saying, borrowing your money. So take your paycheck, put 100% on that home equity, borrow from the home equity, use your home equity to pay off everything else. Again, you're essentially playing the shell game because you're paying off debt with debt that you're using on your home. And of course, the home is the token that you're really playing with when it comes to playing the debt shell game and when it comes to velocity banking. Again, I've seen some videos. There's quite a few out there. Can it work? Yes. Does it mess up a considerable amount of time? Yes. I have seen both ways where it has worked and it has worked well. I've also seen the flip side of it where it was an absolute catastrophe and the member almost ended up in bankruptcy, almost lost her house because of velocity banking. So again, if something changes, good luck, because you put your house up for collateral, which I do not agree with. And me personally, I do not like the home equity line of credits. Again, that is a personal thing where I will not put a second lien on my home. Never will I ever, and I haven't. Our mortgage is almost paid off. We have a couple more years and it will be completely done. But you're putting up the biggest asset that you have in your life, not only the biggest expense when you buy it, but the biggest asset that you have in your life. And you're putting that up as collateral to borrow money and take the equity you're building. So as you go through and as you're paying off your home, you're building equity, you're building more value in the house. All of a sudden, it turns the asset you're building as the home into a liability because now you're maxing out, and most people do, right back to 100% financing where, hey, if I have equity, some places do 80% equity lines, some will do 90% of the value. Some places will do 100% of the value of your home, which means you're taking it right back to whatever term mortgage you had. And now you have a mortgage and you have a second mortgage. Now you're doubling your payments. Again, I know a lot of people use them for consolidations, but overall, it can you're playing a slippery slope and you're playing a bad game with a house. And I've seen people where, hey, they've been in the same house 30, 40, 50 years. Guess what? They still have a 20-year mortgage. So that means by the time they pay that off, they will have been paying on their mortgage because of the home equity refinances, this and that, but they have been paying on a mortgage for 70 years. Guys, that's not what you want. When we talk about debt free, when we talk about right back here with the debt free journey, it is about the elimination of debt. It's not about the shell game of moving the debt. It is about eliminating it, becoming debt free, and staying debt free. That is the big, big part, guys. Could you imagine? And even here, when I think of my mortgage payment, which is only about $1,000, when we think rent around here is much higher than that. If you want to rent a place, even if you look at an apartment, it is a lot more expensive than that. But with $1,000, so in the next couple of years, we pay off our home with an extra $1,000 in my pocket that I'm keeping from my paycheck. I'm not paying interest on my home anymore. I can take that $1,000, I can invest it where I see fit, make a return, make more money back on my money versus giving it to the financial institution that holds my mortgage, which is Rocket Mortgage. And I know we talked about Rocket a little bit earlier, but yes, absolutely. It is about the elimination of debt, being completely debt-free and changing really your life. Because when I think big picture, I look at my family, I look at my parents, they never really had anything. Guys, this is the point where I and my wife want to set up generational wealth for my kids, for my grandkids, getting to the point where we don't have to worry about it because of what we're sacrificing, the time and the effort, the money, everything else. We're doing this now to set up income, to set up investment accounts, to set up everything for generational wealth, which is exactly what we're doing and what we want to really focus on. But let's get back to this, guys. We're almost through. So looking at credit cards and getting back to credit cards, minimizing utilization. This is very, very important, and people do not realize this. When you think of credit utilization, it is the amount you have available on your card in relationship to how much you have borrowed on that card. Credit card companies want to see 30% or less utilization. So easy math, you have a $10,000 limit on your card, you have a $5,000 balance, you are using 50% of the available balance or the utilization on that card. That will affect your credit. That will be costly to your credit. They want to see 30% or lower. Now, the reason for this is when you start getting higher balances on those cards, and of course, this is going to make a big difference depending on the limit that you have on your card. But when you start getting higher than that 30% mark, the credit card companies look at you are living outside of your means because you're supplementing your income with credit card debt. You are utilizing your credit card lines to supplement your income because you're not making enough income to go ahead and pay that card off in full, or you're using those cards to pay for things you can't afford. And that's what it comes down to. Increasing the credit line, of course, can change your utilization. If that same scenario, that $10,000 card goes to a $20,000 limit with a $5,000 balance, well, now you're at that 25% utilization instead of a 50, makes it all hunky-dory, and you can actually do it incredibly well. And then, of course, we get into the consolidation and the balance transfers. Balance transfers, I'm not a huge fan of. Again, this is the personal things that I've seen is when you do a balance transfer, most cards, most companies charge you about 3 to 5%. So you're paying a larger upfront balance transfer fee with the intention of paying it off at the 0% interest over 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, whatever it is. Chances are, and what I normally see is people do not pay it off in that time frame. Where if I do a balance transfer, I pay Bank of America 5% upfront to go ahead and put it. So I get the balance plus my 5% that they charge me. Then I start making payments for the next 12 months. If I'm not paying it off at one place, what's to say I'm going to pay it off at another place when it's at 0%? Again, mathematically, you're just going to continue carrying the debt because it is about focusing again on the elimination of debt and becoming debt-free rather than just playing the shell game and moving all of this debt. You want to get it gone, and you want it to be gone really forever. When it gets to a point, and this is a point that I do see with some individuals, they start seeking professional help, and that's where I come in with the the credit counseling, sitting down, but really going through, and it is free, completely free to go in. Even, I work at a credit union, but going in and doing the credit counseling, sitting down, coming up with a plan, and all of this is completely free. Some places charge, and some places charge a lot of money for it. Companies like GreenPath that will do kind of the credit counseling, some of the consolidation, they charge an exorbitant amount of fees. So be very, very cautious and be very careful when it comes to the amount that they are going to charge. But then, of course, extreme circumstances, debt settlement companies where if you have creditors, if you're taking care of things like that, and then of course, bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is the very last straw, the last resort that will trash and really wreck your credit history for a multitude of years. If you're going chapter 7, if you're going chapter 13, there are some big consequences. And I've even seen individuals that went into bankruptcy court to do bankruptcy. They made too much money and the judge said, nope, I am not going to let you go through and do the bankruptcy. I want you to do credit counseling. I want you to do a couple different things because, of course, they made too much money. They just don't manage the money properly when it comes to budget, when it comes to a spending plan. And of course, when it comes to something like the bankruptcy, you need to seek professional guidance. And guidance doesn't need to be a bankruptcy attorney. They're, of course, going to say, hey, it's easy. We're going to wipe it out. We're going to do this. They're going to get a paycheck. You're going to pay them, a bunch of money. And then, of course, the debt is going to be gone. Now, of course, when we start looking at this, again, kind of big picture, how do we do it? Number one, staying motivated. This is a huge thing. When you think of paying off your debt, it is a long-term journey. It is a challenging journey. It can feel overwhelming. This is one of the reasons in what we do personally. We have accountability partners. So my wife and I hold each other accountable to what we're buying, what we're spending, what we're saving, really finding someone, family, friend, whoever it is that you trust. Really becoming debt-free is something that you can do and something you can do together. But rewarding your milestones, this is another one. So when we finally hit a certain balance within our mortgage, as we've been continually paying it down, we celebrated. We did a movie night, we did a date night, did a couple things, and we did the exact same milestone celebration. When we hit $100,000 in our portfolio and that M1 account, go out, guys. Life is not about saving money forever. There's going to be a point where some activities you love to do, we take annual vacations, we do things with our family, even our extended family, a getaway with the kids. We go to Kalahari, we go to Cedar Point, we do a couple different things and we budget for it all. When we go, when we're doing vacations, when we're doing things of that nature, it is literally paid for before we go. It is done. We set aside so much money. Even now, we're looking to do something for my son's birthday. We've already set aside, a couple $100. Regardless of what we do, we know the money is earmarked. We know it's set aside, that it's not going into that investment account, that it's not going into that account that we have set aside that is really building up. We are setting it aside because we know exactly what it's earmarked for. We're not borrowing on credit cards. We're not utilizing credit cards. We are paying for everything ourselves. And of course, finding inspiration. This is the last one. If you guys have seen any of my videos, especially on other channels, inspiration and motivation is something I love to do, as well as the credit counseling. That is the reason why I started this channel, is being able to help people. And honestly, putting out the content, putting out the videos, anyone that I can help, even a lot of individuals that I know personally that watch the channel and engage with the videos. It is crazy to look and think about it, because even Jordan, I know I've talked to him a couple times. We've seen some people that are regularly in chat. And honestly, it is a very, very accountability orientated aspect. You have to take control of your personal finances. There's going to be a point in your life where it changes, where you see things differently, where you see things, in kind of a different light. For me, it took till I was 35. About 32 to 35 is when I started really getting everything together, started reading a lot of books, started watching a lot of personal finance, went through the financial education program that they have with the credit unions, started doing the financial education piece at work. Absolutely 100% fell in love with it. Being able to take individuals that were going in a bankruptcy situation to getting them, consolidating the debt, paying it off, eliminating it, getting them debt free, into their first house, had their first kid, literally changed their life through the 5 years that I was working with them. It's kind of crazy to think that the impact that you can have in the positive experience and how you can empower people to really live their debt-free journey, staying motivated, staying focused, and making sure that they know that they have a support system. If you have questions, if you have any comments, guys, drop them down below in the chat. I think it's going to pop up. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm 36. Yeah. That's it, Jordan. Is there was a point in my life where my wife and I got married, and we started a family. We were looking at houses for a little bit of time. We saved a lot of money together to do a down payment on a house. I'm talking $30,000, $40,000 on a down payment of a house. They even approved us for way, way more than we were ever wanting to spend. So we had a spending plan. We had a budget of what we wanted for a house, what we were looking for, how much we were going to put down, what the payments were going to do before we started everything. We knew exactly, nuts and bolts, exactly what we were going to spend, how we were going to spend it. And we had a game plan going into it. And you can do the same. Guys, if you're doing anything, major purchases, if you're looking at retirement, if you're looking at a bunch of different things, it is time to do the time. Put in the effort, put in the research, watch the videos, listen to the Audible books, read the books, whatever it is. Guys, it is your time to take a hold of your financial education. A lot of people come in and they'll be like, oh, well, I don't know about anything about this, or I don't know anything about this. There are free resources forever. There is not enough time in your lifetime, in 10 lifetimes, that you could absorb all the financial content that are in different social media platforms. Be cautious who you're watching, but a lot of people that have the education, that have, the degrees behind them, that have a passion for doing this, will do incredibly well. And that's exactly what I love to do and why I love to do it. So, all right, guys, so that is going to do it. Thank you, Jordan, for joining me. I know there's always a few people that might not drop some comments in there, but thank you guys for watching the live stream. I want to try to do this, and I've said it before, and I really want to stick to it, is I want to do this on a regular basis. I want to at least stream on here on a weekly basis, possibly even more than that. That way, if you do have questions, I can kind of answer them one-on-one. And of course, velocity banking. Like I said, I be cautious about it, Jordan. If it's something you want to experiment with, it can be very, very costly. And I've seen people go down some very dark roads when it comes to that. Because again, you're playing the shell game with your house, and I don't like the idea of it. Again, fundamentally, mathematically, I understand why it works and how it works, but I don't get it. So one more question: tax exemption. What are we talking about, Jordan? So a question about tax exemption. Are you talking about paying taxes, or are you talking about like the tax-free accounts? Let me know exactly what you're thinking with the tax exemption and what you're thinking about tax exemption. Because I know there's a lot of stuff. Now, when it comes to taxes, everyone's situation can be a little bit different depending on what you do, depending on your status. If you're single, if you're married, what you're claiming. There are so many more things. So let me know what you're thinking, Jordan. Drop your question in there. I'll hang out for just another minute. But yeah, when it comes to the debt-free journey and getting rid of it, there's a lot of different ways, including taxes. That's a part that is almost opening Pandora's box, because everyone's situation is very, very different. I am not a tax accountant by any means, but anywhere that you can save on giving your money away, I absolutely, payroll basically. Yeah, tax exemptions, guys, there's a set amount you have to pay. So when you think about your payroll deductions, when you think about the money you're paying to the government, so every single dollar you make is taxed. You're giving a certain amount to the government. You're required to pay X amount of dollars. When you file your taxes, I'm sure just like you did, Jordan, when you file your taxes, it'll say, well, based on your income, you owe X amount of dollars in taxes. That is a non-negotiable. That is your IRS tax bracket. If you can lower your tax bracket, if you can get that a little bit lower, makes a big difference. Now, my recommendation when it comes to taxes, a couple ways to do it is, one is the traditional method. Now, this I do not recommend. When it comes to traditional IRAs, when it comes to traditional 401ks, I do not, and I would not opt for either of those, because the Roth has such an advantage. When you think of long-term investing, especially again, 36 years old, you have roughly 30 years to the age of 66, 67, 30, 31 years. Do the Roth option, pay the taxes now. I know it's going to suck. You're paying a little bit more in taxes, but I would pay it now, having the Roth option. And that's exactly what I do. At 45, I have the Roth option for everything that we're putting money into. But tax exemption, when you start looking at other accounts, when you start looking at HSA accounts, we max our HSA account out every single month, which I believe this year, or excuse me, every single year. I believe this year it's like $8,300 for a family. I think quoting the number, but around $8,300. That is $8,300 that I do not have to pay in tax. So if I make $100,000, I'm knocking out $8,300. That 92 and some change is what I have to pay my tax on, bringing me down a little bit more in the HSA triple tax advantage account. If you can get an HSA 100% get an HSA, guys. I cannot stress, when you get to retirement, they estimate around $70,000. That is right, $70K that you're going to need in just healthcare needs during retirement. If I can put $70,000 in an HSA account, when I retire, all of those medical bills are going to be paid for. The account will be growing because my HSA is invested in the market. As the market goes and it grows, you're getting a big, big tax advantage out of there, making it very, very well worth it. Anywhere, again, that you can save a little bit of taxes, and there are some programs, there's a couple different things. Even, for instance, we contribute quite a bit of money into the MASP program. So that is the Michigan Education Savings Program. It is a college fund through the state of Michigan that lowers our state tax. So not only here do we pay the federal tax, we also pay the state tax as well as other ones, but it lowers the amount that we pay in state tax because we're making contributions into tax advantage accounts. Now, of course, they grow just like they normally do. If the money is used for education, it is tax-free, meaning we get a benefit when you take it, when you put the money in. We get a benefit when they take the money out, as long as it's for education. We don't have to pay taxes on it either, on the growth and the contributions. You never have to pay tax on it. So there's some pretty cool things, Jordan. And honestly, if you're doing your taxes, sit down with your tax advisor, see what's going to make the most sense. Where can I contribute more funds? Where can I cut down my tax burden? Because every dollar you're not giving to Uncle Sam versus investing it somewhere else is somewhere you can put that money. Being debt-free gives you the ability to invest, gives you the ability to save, live the life that you want. And that's exactly what we want. So again, guys, that is going to do it for today for the live stream. Thank you guys for joining me. Have a great day. Let me know what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.